Hi, I'm Kelly Grafton, and welcome to In the Know, a podcast where we explore what it takes to grow, lead, and thrive as a sales professional. Each episode, I'll sit down with sales experts to dive into the training, techniques, and real-world experiences that shape successful careers in sales. Whether you're just getting started or well on your journey, you'll hear practical insights and inspiring conversations to help you stay in the know. Hey, MemoryBlue, welcome back to In the Know podcast. We have another guest speaker here, and she's been here a few times, so excited to have you back, Biddy.
Thank you.
We are diving into so many things, and having Biddy here, you guys, if you've listened to the other podcasts, you know that she is a cold call research nerd, and we love it. We're benefiting so much from it. She is a assistant professor at the University of Washington State, and you have a PhD in marketing. Mm-hmm. So you are just in the weeds with all of these things that we do every day here at MemoryBlue. So we're so excited. And specifically, this podcast is going to be everything you want to know. So it's called In the Know, but this is everything you want to know. So all the questions you all have when it comes to Biddy's research, we're going to kind of go through some of those statistics that she took a lot of time analyzing our MemoryBlue's calls, a bunch of calls, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to go into those statistics that you all asked for. And so these are the things that you can directly apply and say, hey, the data says from Biddy says to do this. You can go adjust anything you need to adjust to be more effective on your calls. But before we get into that, you guys wonder, there's not a lot of people like Biddy out there who are studying cold calls, right? It's not like how many friends do you have that do that outside
If I'm honest with you, so I have a weird amount of marketing PhDs in my life, but I am the only one, to my knowledge, who studies cold calls. So as you can imagine, it is a match made in heaven between me and MemoryBlue.
It really is. I'm so glad this happened. And it happened because, how did it happen?
Yeah, so I got connected with MemoryBlue a couple of years ago because I work with the Center for Professional Sales at Washington State University. I do teach sales classes at the college level, and I was going to an event, and one of the reps from MemoryBlue was there. Shout out to Carson Newman.
Carson?
Yes. And we got to talking, and he was telling me what MemoryBlue does, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This is amazing. This is what I do with my research. And so he connected me with Michelle, and the rest is history.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Well, speaking of history, right, you were already in the midst of data, call analysis and all that. So how does one stumble upon wanting to research cold calls?
I think it's a combination of curiosity and just persistence. So I was a field sales rep before I got into academia. And so I did go out and meet with other clients after I, initially contacted them, but I inherited a underperforming portfolio. So what that meant is that if I wanted to do well and make a lot of money in commission, I had to go out there and prospect a lot. So I spent so much time making calls, cold calls to people, trying to get them to schedule a meeting with me. And so it's really the exact scenario your SDRs are set up against. And it was just kind of just struck me at one point. I was like, why are some people saying yes and other people are saying no? The only thing in these phone calls that I have is the tool called my voice. And so what can I be doing to fine-tune that to increase the likelihood that they'll say yes? So that interest actually sparked my research focus, because when I went in to get my PhD, I was like, hey, I want to look into cold calling. And luckily, I was able to connect with an advisor who helped me along with this topic. And to my knowledge, I'm kind of like the cold call queen in marketing these days. So
yeah, I would say so. How many years have you been studying cold calls now, or researching?
9.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I definitely think you earned the queen title for sure.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn and nerd out with calls,
she's your girl.
I'm more than happy to do so.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I love that you said the one tool I have, right? Because so many times we're looking externally for, I can't do this because of that. But you were like, hey, I have this tool. It's mine, and I can adjust and learn how to use it best to get the results I want for it. Like you said, I want to make this commission. I think everyone here at MemoryBlue wants to make our commission.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm so grateful that you're helping us figure out what is going on with all of our cold calls so people can be more effective.
Yeah, that's what we all want at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. So this episode's really fun because we've talked a lot about so many different other things, and hopefully our team has been able to apply a lot of those things from the different vocal cues. I just have the fresh, the thought process of when you're talking about politeness and deference and all these different things, and then informal and formal language.
Yeah.
But they also had a lot of specific questions coming to what we learn here, things that we are taught here, and what does the data say?
Yeah. Great point. And I have given a couple of presentations to MemoryBlue folks over the years, and I've gotten a few questions that I wanted to make sure I was able to address. And these are things that are top of mind for SDRs, for managers, and so that's what we're going to be diving into today to see what the data say about the questions you guys posed.
I love it. So we have a couple different topics today that we're going to hit on because there was a lot of questions, and I'm sure we're going to get more after this podcast. Which bring them on. But let's jump into it. So we have a bunch of different stats that you took a lot of time, you dove into, and we're going to break some things down. Yeah. And I think one of the first things that we were talking about was just in general, like, yes, cold call, like the prospects, but the statistics that come from the different components of that.
100%. So I'm going to call this in the bucket of the anatomy of a C-whip. Is what I'm going to call it. So basically what I wanted to look at first and foremost is what is the success rate? So how many of these C-whips are ending in a meeting being scheduled? And in general, the average is 9%, which, guys, might not sound like much. That is incredible. Like, when I first uncovered this, I was like, I don't know what the hell they're doing at MemoryBlue, but they're doing it right. Because I have worked with other Fortune 500 companies, and it's closer to around 2% in many places. So,
are you for real?
Oh, yeah. You guys are
MemoryBlue.
kicking ass and taking names.
Okay.
So you should feel very, very good about that. And then I was kind of thinking, okay, what does the average call look like? And what it looks like is, they're brief, as we all know, but there's about 9 back and forth exchanges. So I call those speaking turns. I say something, you respond. And so there's about 9 of those exchanges. But one thing that was very, very noticeable is when I looked at those successful calls, the average was a little over 20. Wow. So having the prospect on the line for longer is a good thing, right? Yeah. And it's not just figuring out those details to schedule the meeting, although that is part of it. There's a lot of back and forth and kind of trying to work over that resistance to just end the call and try to dig in a little bit more to what they need, actually.
That is so interesting. Okay, so I'm still stuck on, and forgive me, but the 9%. And just how boss that is at MemoryBlue. So are we going to get into that, or is there anything top of mind that you can attribute that to? Like, why are we crushing it compared to others?
I would give a huge shout out to the training that you all receive. I think it speaks to your training, because a lot of people, myself included, right? Like, I went into my field sales role. I didn't get trained on how to prospect. I didn't get trained on how to cold call. I was just learning it on the fly. You guys have the benefit of having a really well-established academy that is based in, statistics and your own data that can help drive that, and you have other people who are working on that. And I do believe that part of it, and this is a little bit different from what I was doing, but this is all your SDRs are doing. So they're really homing that skill, and they're becoming experts in that, which, by the way, guys, this is an incredible skill to have. If you can prospect, you can do just about anything in sales. So, yeah.
That is awesome. And I agree. Like, my first role was a sales development rep as well at a tech company. And it was very much so figure it out yourself. And it's so awesome to be at a company where people literally pay for our training. Yeah. And it's cool that through your own statistics, that you're seeing the results of that. I mean, we can even use that to help go sell more of our academy. But hopefully our
really
reps are hearing that of how awesome our training is, and it allows for that well-oiled machine. And like you said, our whole goal at MemoryBlue is to elevate sales professionals. Yeah. And no matter where they go next, that skill set is so important. Yeah. And so that's so cool that was just a stat that you uncovered. Yeah. And so I love that. And then just going back to the back and forth. So just so I'm clear. So you said that speaking turns is what you say. So if I'm speaking, then I turn it to you. Is that 1, 2, 3, or what is that?
Yeah, that's a great call. So I would call individual turns, speaking turns. Like I just call like a back and forth exchange around. Okay. And that, by the way, is just a biddyism.
I love that.
So that is not technical. Speaking turn is, but yeah, a round. So 9, I guess, rounds is what I mean.
Okay. Yes. Okay. And then you mentioned something about 20 turns, so about the same. Okay.
About 20 turns per person in those successful calls versus 7 in the unsuccessful calls. So it is a huge, huge, huge difference. Now, what's super interesting to me too is looking into these calls in general, just looking at like number of words used, just to get a sense of like who's talking in these calls and what are, not necessarily what are they saying, but who's doing the conversation, who's driving it. What was interesting was, even though there is a massive difference in the length of the calls from successful to unsuccessful, it was about equal in terms of how much the SDRs is speaking in each call, whether successful or unsuccessful. So truly, it was less than 1 percentage point difference from the success versus unsuccessful. And that is about 65% of the time the SDR is talking versus 35% of the time the prospect is talking. So I found that to be kind of interesting as well, that no matter if it's long or short, that tends to be the general breakdown between the SDR and the prospect.
Wow. And so just so I'm understanding correctly, a successful call, what would be the percentage breakdown between prospect and SDR?
Same. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So whether or not it ended in a meeting being scheduled or not, the calls are always about 65% the SDR speaking.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So we're going to dive in what makes a successful call from some of these statistics?
We're gonna look into some of those things for sure.
Yes. Okay. I'm excited to
starting with the time.
Yeah. Okay. Timing of when we dial. Okay.
So I had some SDRs ask me like, okay, is there a certain time, like a golden hour, that I should really be focused on? Is there a better time of day to call? And I looked into it, and the answer is no. Statistically. And that is really, really good news because you are calling people at multiple hours of the day. So you are already doing that. And one thing that I want to caveat is I am looking only within the hours that MemoryBlue is already scheduling the blitzes. So I know that MemoryBlue came up with these timeframes because that was like perceived to be the best options. And that very well could be the case, but I'm not comparing, 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. I'm only comparing within those hours that are already set. And within those hours, there is no better time. So I take that as call it any time. You have equal likelihood of being successful. And MemoryBlue probably knows what it's saying with setting those blitz times.
Yeah, so keep doing what we're doing. So typically we do 8:30 to 10. Yeah. And then we have our 3 to 4:30 time frame. And it's across the time zones pretty much keep the same.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, well, that's good to know. So we don't need to change up our whole calendar. So
yes, excellent. Okay. Don't need you coming in at 8 p.m. Yes.
Good. Okay. Another cool question that you got was around like the prospect status. So what was that question exactly, and then what were some of the things you found?
I had an SDR just ask, like, is there a different way you should be speaking with the prospect depending on what status they are? So what I did is I looked at the data and I separated the prospects that y'all called into low, medium, and high status. Now, low status are titles. I'm just looking at titles like, realtor, controller, administrator, database administrator, stuff like that. For the medium level, what I was doing was I was looking at things like senior manager or software engineer, product manager, someone who has some kind of upward trend in their career, but maybe not at the very, very top. And then we looked at the high level people. And these are people like global director or VP of sales, things like that. So I looked at these 3 different categories of prospects, and I dug into the data to kind of figure out, like, okay, well, is there a different, like a best day of the week to call these people? So maybe you have some people in your list that you're going to call. Okay, should you hold on to those high value people to Friday, for example? The answer is that there is no best day of the week to call those low and high status folks. You could call them on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Doesn't matter. You have an equally likely chance of scheduling a meeting no matter when. However, and I don't know why, the medium status people have a slightly better chance if they're called on Tuesdays. And once again, I don't have a theoretical reason for why that is, but that is what the data are saying.
Okay, so maybe if we're trying to be very strategic, Tuesday, and you mentioned titles like senior manager title. Okay.
Yeah. And even diving deeper still, I looked at within a given day, there's certain hours, right? So is the difference existing from like different levels of status per time of day? And the answer is no.
Okay.
So it really actually simplifies the heck out of things.
Yeah. That's
so you don't have to overthink it. If you can move those medium status folks to Tuesdays, great. The low and high status people, don't worry about time. So really it does simplify things a lot.
Yeah. Okay. What was one of your next questions that you had? I see something about formality.
Yeah, we talked about formality when, like, in a previous call, and this has been a topic of one of our podcasts as well. And I actually got that idea because I spoke with some SDRs at the Seattle office. So I started to look into that and tying the formality piece in with the status that we just discussed, low, medium, and high. I was wondering, is there a different formality like that you should be conveying with people high versus low or whatever? And the answer is that it doesn't matter. You could speak low formality with low or high with the low to medium status people, but with the high status people, you do not want to speak formally. They are particularly not responding well to that. It's an incredibly strong effect, actually.
Wow.
And my post hoc analysis of that is that these high status people, these VP of sales, global manager, what have you, they're kind of used to people kissing their butt, right? And if you can throw them off by being a little bit less formal, and as you might recall from one of my previous podcasts, that is casual and conversational, and that might be something that they're not used to hearing that often. So that might be particularly helpful with those high status people in general.
Yeah, and I imagine just refreshing. It's someone who's not nervous to call and knows I'm just a human like you, and still respectful and polite.
Sure.
But being able to have like an honest conversation about, hey,
absolutely,
does this interest you? And that's so cool. The data is so strongly on that.
Yeah,
but not for the other titles.
Not for the other titles, yeah. I mean, they have a weak effect with the formality. So informality basically is never going to hurt you, essentially, no matter who you're talking to. But the effect is really strong with the high status people. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so good to know. Take note. Hopefully you're taking lots of notes.
Yeah, and as one more thing on the formality, just one more follow-up. I had another SDR ask, okay, are you seeing people use more formal or informal language at different days of the week? So for example, maybe the weekend's coming up, are SDRs more likely to use informal language? The answer is no. SDRs tend to have their style, and they tend to implement that relatively equally throughout the week. Now that doesn't mean you can't change that. This is not a fixed characteristic. You can learn to speak more formally or informally. But across the board, we're not seeing a ton of difference in terms of people using more or less formality at different times throughout the week.
Okay. Interesting. we have, let me see, what else do we have? So we have some different statistics here. I don't know if you want to go through those of the calls for some questions posed about the presentation from February.
Yeah.
I see you have a lot of stats here.
I sure do.
Your favorite.
I sure do. Yeah. So, one of the big things that I have been asked to look into was, did I catch you at a bad time?
Ooh, this one's good. I'm excited to get into this one.
Does it work?
Does it work, Biddy?
Well, so what I did, just to give you a sense, I'm methodological, so I feel compelled to tell you my procedure. I randomly sampled about 150 calls. I removed all of the people who did not make the decision. Sometimes you guys call people and it's like, that's not my wheelhouse, or I retired. Okay, they're out of that. And I looked at these calls in detail to answer this and some other questions that we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. And so what I did was I coded, did I catch you at a bad time? Some other introduction, which typically was, how's your day going so far, or something like that. And there were a couple people who said, did I catch you at a good time? So those were the 3 areas I looked at. So over half, a majority of you guys, 64%, did say, did I catch you at a bad time? Only 4% said, did I catch you at a good time? And then the rest, 32%, they said something else, whether it's like, how's your day going so far? How are you doing? Like, good morning, whatever. So I looked at it, and can I have a drum roll, please? The bottom line is, between catch you in a bad time and something else doesn't really matter, statistically.
Oh, okay.
So, did I catch you at a bad time? 6.5% of those calls ended with a successful meeting booked, versus a little like 7.5 essentially for the other greetings, good morning, how are you doing today? Now that does not mean that the good morning is better. I didn't test causality. I'm just giving you the descriptive statistics.
Okay.
But they're pretty comparable, and with the sample being like 150 or so, I would be hesitant to say one is better than the other. I would say use them interchangeably. If you feel more comfortable saying, did I catch you at a bad time? Keep doing that. Yeah. If you say, if you feel comfortable asking how they're doing, keep doing that. So I would say go with whatever feels more comfortable with you, because they're both about equal in effectiveness. Would be my main takeaway.
Okay, that's so interesting, because I know in Academy we do teach that more, like as a pattern interrupter. It's not like most people, did I catch you at a good time, is like what you would expect, so it's a little bit different. Yeah. But to your point, again, kind of what we've said at previous podcasts, what you've talked about is what works for you, finding out your flow and owning that.
Well, absolutely, and I think as far as pattern interruption, that's why I think we're seeing a high conversion rate among the other folks who are asking, how are you doing today? Because that's kind of a pattern interrupter too, right? I'm getting an unknown call from someone I don't know. They're asking me how I'm doing. I kind of have to respond to abide by social norms. So it's one of those things where that is why I think that they're working in similar ways. Okay. And so I think they're actually both good. I would recommend both of these options for that very reason.
Okay. Okay. I like that. So we know the truth now about, did I catch you at a bad time?
Yeah.
I love it. I was excited about that data. Okay, I see we have some information on parroting.
Yes, so one of the things that I had people ask about was, like, you guys are all trained to say things like, since you said X, I think this would be beneficial, or things like that. And another thing that I've heard was kind of trained at the Academy was like, what I'm hearing is XYZ. So what I did is with the sample of calls, I looked for those specific phrases. So I want to be clear, I did like kind of a bag of words text analysis. So if you did a slight variation, this wasn't captured. But just to give us some quick and dirty stats on what's going on here. And I did not see very many instances of this. So people are not using these phrases as much as perhaps we would want. Okay. So it only showed up in 5% of cases. So those of you stats nerds know that anything less than 5 is chance. So it's coming up so infrequently that it's just like a chance kind of thing. And this was regardless of call length. Because
Interesting.
I looked at these conversations, and it is very true that in shorter calls, you're going to have a lot less opportunity to do this.
Right, because I didn't get enough information to say, since you said this.
100%.
That makes sense.
But I saw a lot of opportunities to do so in longer calls that were not being taken advantage of. So what I would encourage SDRs to do is to, when you're in a conversation that is actually going on, we talked about the average rounds back and forth exchange being about 9. If you're in there on turn 9, use one of those.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these calls were, 20 or so like back and forths, and still none of them. So I would say just try to incorporate them a little bit more.
Okay, and those phrases, like you said, were since you said this, or what I'm hearing from you
Yeah.
is this.
Yeah.
And like you said, the parroting back into the conversation. And I know that is something that I know a lot of the managers and Academy teaches. So it's just an opportunity for us to use that more in those the opportunities we do have that information to use on a call.
Sure. And this could just be a thing where like at the academy, it's kind of like school, right? You're getting bombarded with information, you're learning so much, and I'm sure you absorbed a ton of information, and maybe this just slipped through the cracks. And so this is just a good reminder to like incorporate it in those longer conversations.
Yeah, really good point. Because it is a skill, especially because you're just trying to get to that longer call.
Yeah.
But now if you're in that, you're in that part of your call skills, that's something to definitely bring back into it.
Totally.
So that's really interesting. Awesome. All right, so I think we have another one here. Oh, this one's a good one, Biddy, because this is what we hear a lot. Our prospects try to, it's like, is it a brush off? Do they actually want more information? They always ask, or not always, but a lot of times, send me an email.
Yes.
Tell us about this. What did you find with this statistic?
Well, I understand where the SDRs are coming from, because this happens in 20% of the calls that I looked at.
Wow.
So 1 out of every 5 calls is going to be asking, hey, just send me an email. So that's kind of a lot to deal with. Now, I had an SDR ask me that, and then I had Michelle say, well, how many times are the SDRs pushing back on that? And what I would describe as pushing back is something along the lines of, I'd be happy to send you an email, but it's sometimes emails raise more questions than answers, so why don't we schedule a time, at whatever point in time. So I looked into that as well. How frequently, when that is happening, so 20% of calls, they're getting the objection, send me an email. Of those calls, how many times are SDRs actually pushing back on that? And the answer is only about 40% of the time. So less than half of the time. Now, a majority of the time, 60% of the time, they're just saying, sure, what's a good email? So that would be, an example of them kind of just saying, all right, yeah, sure. And I understand. I mean, I've listened to a lot of calls that y'all have made, and I get it. I mean, you're on the phone with a prospect who might just really want to get you off the phone, and it doesn't feel comfortable to dig a little bit further and to object when you're getting that objection, and to kind of push
and to hear
back.
their tone potentially.
Yes. But I would encourage SDRs to channel their inner Wayne Gretzky. If you guys know his famous quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yep.
Your commission, your bonus is on the line with this. Pushing back a little, not being overly rude or anything, but just saying what you're taught in academy. Like, a lot of times
and
emails
you can hedge it.
Yeah, you can use hedges as well. Going back to that deference piece, exactly. So these are all strategies you can use to kind of just give them another opportunity to come to the table, or at least, make it a little bit harder for them to back out at the last minute.
Sure. And I just want to confirm, because I think we talked about this, because we're taught, what's a good email? They start getting all that information, but you filtered out those that say the next part of like, hey, I'll send that over, but typically raises more questions. So you filtered that piece out. So these are people that are just saying, I'll send you an email. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
And that's happening 60% of the time.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So that's a good stat to, I think that might be something fun to like review back in like a year and say, hey, did we inverse that? Or where are we at with that? Because it is, I mean, I think it's just one, a reminder, but two, it's a little bit of a courage to go into that. But I think if you know what to say, and I think that's such a great objection handle of, it is true. Like, if you're truly interested in this information, it will create more conversation or questions. Let's set up that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you can kind of, we've been talking about this, but I would love to have a whole training on just like objection handling.
Oh, yes.
Because I love responding to objection. Like, once again, very nerdy about this stuff. But you could also
we can set this up, Biddy.
Yeah, you could also say something along the lines of like, I'll definitely send the email. What do you want in that? And be like, just as a follow-up, because I know that these emails send more cause more questions than answers. Could we set up a time to meet and to discuss the content of this email if you're free on Wednesday at 10 or something like that?
So much good hedging.
Yes, lots of good hedging. Exactly. So you can do both, actually.
Yeah.
But to your point, the 60% are just basically like, I don't want to say rolling over, but just saying, okay, sure, yeah, I'll send the email by.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's really good to know where we're at now. And then, like I said, I'm excited for you all to be listening and find out. Use from the other podcast, using the hedges. And to be able to have that confidence to and it kind of push. I don't even know if I would call it pushback, but just say, hey, I'm just trying to help you here.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really important. And this is something that I also emphasize in my classes with my students is if you are selling something that you feel passionate about, which I truly hope all of you are, you are not here to pester them. You are not here to waste their time. You are here to help them and offer value. And you should go into that conversation very confident that you can do those things.
Yes, such a good point, right? I'm adding value to you. This information is going to help you with XYZ.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, I think that was most of our questions here. And I know we had some information for the UK folks too, because this is all US based. But we do have some things potentially for them as well that I know you're going to be working on. So we didn't want to leave them out.
Yes. Yeah. UK people, I'm very excited to dive into that data and provide you guys some specific insights. I just recently got access to that information, so I didn't have time to dig into it quite yet. But I really, really, really look forward to this, and I'd be so freaking curious to see if there are differences, which I'm sure there are, and I will present them to you as soon as I can. Yeah, that's going to be fun. So I appreciate you spending time on those calls too, and just see what the similarities are, what the differences are. It's cool to confirm a lot of what Academy's doing, and also things that, hey, just find your flavor. Yeah. Hopefully this really helps you guys with your work that you're already putting so much effort into. But again, what we're talking about is leveraging the statistics to work smarter and harder so we can have the success and, make the money that they want to make. Absolutely.
Heck yeah. So anything else to add today?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining, Biddy, all the way from Washington State to Virginia. Yes. We appreciate it. Yes. And you all go apply what you learned from today. This was such good info, so much gold, and excited to see what you guys do with it. And with that, we'll see you the next time in the gym.